All right, rational expressions and equations. So when you're doing a multiplication problem with rational expressions, really you are just doing, it's a factor and cancel problem. It looks a little fancy, but really you can just put everything in parentheses and factor and cancel from there. So two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to negative 10 are negative 5 and negative 5. So x squared minus 10x plus 25 multiplies to x minus 5 times x minus 5. I have that standalone 3 over there. I'm just going to leave it in the same order. You can absolutely change that order if you would like. I have x plus 3 on the bottom. And then 25 minus x squared is the difference of squares. Just make sure you keep that order intact. So that's going to be 5 minus x and 5 plus x. You may be thinking, well, you just said this is a factor and cancel problem and there is nothing to cancel. Keep in mind that you can't cancel the 3 on top and the 3 on bottom because the 3 in the denominator is linked to that x plus 3. What we can work on canceling is one of the x minus 5s up top with this 5 minus x on the bottom. And we can do that by factoring out a negative in one of them. So you can do it in the numerator or the denominator. I'm going to do it in the numerator because I can take that negative out and put it with the 3. So if I switch the signs here in that set of parentheses, I need to take a negative out. So it would look like this, really. Negative 1 times 5 minus x. And now those are cancelable. So my new fraction, x minus 5, negative 1, and 3 all multiplied together. So negative 3 times x minus 5 over, in my denominator, x plus 3 times, I'm going to write it as x plus 5 because 5 plus x makes me a little itchy. But you could absolutely leave it as 5 plus x. Keep in mind that you're preparing for a multiple choice semester exam. You actually may be using this to prepare for your exit exam as well, which is a lovely thing to prepare for too. But just keep in mind that you need to be able to match if you're thinking about that multiple choice final exam. You need to be able to match the answers that you'll be given. Okay, you could also graph your original function and your answer and make sure that they are equivalent, or graph your options and make sure that they're equivalent. Okay, B. B is another, we have a lot of factoring to do on B as well, but this is a subtraction problem. So we're working towards a common denominator. To make a common denominator, we need to see what they have in common to start with. So I'm going to factor my 8x squared plus 6x plus 1. 8 times 1 is 8. Two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 6 are 4 and 2. So I'm going to split the middle. Again, this is a legal way of factoring where every step is equivalent to the step before. 6x is the same as 4x plus 2x. I can factor out a 4x. I'm left with 2x plus 1. And I can factor out a 1, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. So I'm going to be able to replace my 8x squared plus 6x plus 1 with 4x plus 1 times 2x plus 1. All right, now let's work on 2x squared minus x minus 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Two numbers that multiply to negative 2 and add to negative 1 are negative 2 and positive 1. Again, that step is equivalent to the original problem because negative 2x plus 1x is negative 1. I can factor out a 2x from my first two terms and a 1 from my next two terms. And that leaves me with 2x plus 1, x minus 1. That's a lot of kind of prep work to do our fraction here. But now we're ready. So what I really have is 2x plus 3 over 4x plus 1 times 2x plus 1 minus 3 over 2x plus 1 times x minus 1. So I think we got really good at adding and subtracting fractions and finding common denominators in our trig proofs unit. But here we want to multiply. What we have in common are these 2x plus 1. So what we need to do is multiply our fractions by what they don't have. That's kind of how I think through it. So my first fraction has the 2x plus 1, but it doesn't have the x minus 1. And make sure you FOIL on top. My second fraction has the 2x plus 1, but it doesn't have the 4x plus 1. And now, if you look at your denominators, you should see the same terms everywhere. I see x minus 1, I see 2x plus 1, and I see 4x plus 1. And your common denominator is ready to go. The only time that you would need to do anything with that denominator going forward now is if you were able to cancel. Don't worry about multiplying that out. It's actually more useful in factored form because you can tell me what the domain is. Okay, so we can do a lot of foiling in our numerator. I'm going to work here in this fraction to the left. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. And negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And I can combine those like terms later. Now I need to do the same thing with this negative 3. I'm not foiling here though, not double distributing, just single distribute. Negative 3 times 4x is negative 12x. And negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So you're going to want to be really careful and precise here. Again, none of the steps are difficult. Just got to make sure you're being careful with all of them. Okay, now we're going to combine like terms. My 2x squared doesn't have any like terms. I have 3x and I use it. 3x minus 2x is 1x. Minus 12, negative 11x. And negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. So I took care of all of those. And now let's see if we can factor the numerator. So in my numerator I have 2 times negative 6. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. Two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 11 are negative 12 and positive 1. And so this does appear, the numerator does appear to be factorable, which isn't always the case. So I'm going to come over here off to the side and factor. 2x squared minus 12. I'm going to be able to take out a 2x. I'm going to be left with x minus 6. 1x and 6 don't have anything in common, so I can take out a 1, and I'm left with x minus 6. So my new numerator is going to be 2x plus 1 times x minus 6. And that's lovely because we have a 2x plus 1 in our denominator. Just going to recopy here. Obviously, you wouldn't do this step on a multiple choice test. You would just pick your answer, but want to show you what you can cancel, and you can cancel the 2x plus 1. So your final answer here, x minus 6 divided by x minus 1 times 4x plus 1. Awesome, that was a ton of factoring. Of course, I loved it. Again, when you're using these videos, if anything goes too fast, pause. I think it's a great thing to do to pause and work ahead, and then let the video run as I catch up with you, if I can catch up with you, to make sure you're doing things right. All right, good job working through the first 2 problems on the final exam review. Here comes some more.